Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something very small and strangely comforting. We're going to save a fire without keeping it loud. We'll explore the old gentle routine of letting embers sleep under ash so the morning can wake up warm. If you enjoy cozy survival history and calm everyday details, subscribe and let's settle into the quiet art of ash and ember saving. In many homes before modern heating, fire wasn't only a tool, it was a rhythm. It meant cooked food, safe light, dry clothes, warm hands, and, most importantly in winter, a livable night. But keeping a flame roaring all night wastes fuel and steals sleep. So people learned a softer method, banking the fire. Not extinguishing it, not feeding it constantly, just calming it into a slow, protected glow. Ash as a blanket. The secret is that ash, when used carefully, behaves like a thin, insulating blanket. It helps embers hold heat by reducing how much fresh oxygen reaches them, and by slowing the escape of warmth into cold air. Think of it like this. A lively flame wants air. Embers can survive with much less. If you cover the embers with a gentle layer of ash, they don't die quickly, they simply quiet down. And this is a very sleep-friendly idea. The house doesn't need excitement, it needs endurance. The evening routine, turning fire into embers. Imagine a winter evening in a small home. Supper is done, the busiest work is finished. Outside, the air is sharp and dark. Instead of letting the fire burn wild, someone tends it with patience. They do a few calm steps. Pull the larger, stronger coals together into a small mound. Lay a thicker piece of wood nearby so it can smolder slowly rather than flare. Let the flames settle into a deep red glow. Then, with a small shovel or hearth tool, draw ash gently over the coals, like pulling a quilt over a sleeping child. Not too much, not too tightly, just enough to quiet the embers and protect them. This is the difference between a fire that vanishes by midnight and a fire that can be woken again at dawn. Waking the fire in the morning. Morning in a cold house can feel like starting from zero. Hands stiff, breath visible, the room unwilling. But if embers survived the night, the morning changes completely. Someone kneels at the hearth and gently uncovers the fire, brushing ash aside to reveal a faint red glow underneath. They add dry kindling. They blow softly or fan once or twice, and the embers respond. Not instantly with a roar. First, a brighter red. Then a whisper of smoke. Then the first small lick of flame. It feels like waking something living, something that never truly left. That saved ember is saved time, saved fuel, saved effort. It's also saved comfort. Why this was more than convenience. Ash and ember saving shaped whole household behavior. It meant you didn't have to strike sparks from flint every morning. You didn't waste precious tinder when everything outside was damp. You didn't depend entirely on neighbors for a relight in storms. You could keep the house from dropping into brutal cold overnight. In harsh winters, that might be the difference between ordinary discomfort and real danger. So this quiet routine became almost sacred in a practical way. It was a small discipline that protected everyone. The gentle sounds of a banked hearth. A banked fire has a different sound than an active one. No crackling drama, just a soft shifting of coals, a tiny tick of settling ash, a faint hush when warm air rises. It's the sound of the house choosing sleep. a cozy ending scene. Now let your mind settle into a simple, sleepy picture. The room is dim. The day has ended. Someone kneels at the hearth one last time. They pull the coals together, cover them gently with ash, and then stop. They don't keep checking. They don't keep feeding. They trust the quiet system. Outside, the night is cold, but inside, there is a small hidden warmth, like a secret kept under pale gray ash. It will last, patiently, until morning. And you can borrow that feeling tonight. You don't need to keep your mind burning bright. You can bank the day's energy into a soft ember. Cover it gently with calm. Let it glow quietly in the background. Then, rest. There's a moment late at night when the house is already leaning towards sleep. Voices are softer, footsteps are slower. The room is dim, the hearth is banked. The embers are hidden under ash like a warm secret. And in that moment, the most important skill is not doing one more thing, it's stopping. Because every extra check, every extra poke, every extra worry can accidentally undo the calm system you've already created. You can stir the ash and let oxygen rush in. You can wake the coals and burn them out faster. You can expose heat and lose it. You can turn a quiet ember nest back into a needy fire. So tonight, we'll talk about the final ritual, the last check that ends the day without restarting it. The purpose of the last check. The last check exists for one reason: safety. It's not a chance to improve the fire. It's not a chance to top it up. It's not a chance to rearrange. It's simply confirm the embers are banked, confirm tools are put away, confirm nothing is dangerously close, confirm the house is closed to drafts. Then you leave it alone. In traditional homes, this check often becomes a role. Someone does it once, and then the household trusts it. One check, not 10. There's a difference between responsibility and anxiety. Responsibility checks once. Anxiety checks again and again. Old households, especially when fuel was precious, learned that repeated poking ruins the whole point of ember saving. Every disturbance changes airflow, changes heat distribution, changes how long coals will last. So the best practice is check once, then stop. This is a fire lesson that applies beautifully to the mind at bedtime. What people looked for. The last check is quick and sensory. People looked and listened. Is the ash blanket smooth and settled? Is there any open flame still licking up? If yes, it needs calming. Is there any gap where draft could pull through? Are any dry cloths, straw, or wood too close? Are hearth tools placed safely, not leaning into the fire zone? Sometimes they also confirmed a water bucket was in its usual place. Simple fire safety, the kind that prevents panic. No complicated inspection, just quiet habits. The no more fuel rule. A common discipline is don't add fresh wood at the last moment. Fresh wood can flare unexpectedly. It can smoke. It can create sparks. It can force you to stay awake to watch it. Ember saving likes the opposite. Let the fire finish its active phase earlier. Let coals settle, bank them gently, then stop feeding. So the last check often includes a quiet decision. The wood pile stays still. The night is not for building bigger fires. The night is for letting stored heat do its job. Closing the drafts without sealing the house into stale air. Homes still needed some ventilation, but drafts are ember enemies. So people close the obvious leaks. Shutters latched, door bar set, curtain hung if needed, gaps stuffed with cloth or moss. The goal is stable air, not suffocating air.
Stable air makes embers last. Stable air also makes sleep feel safer. Less whistling, less cold river at the floor, fewer sudden noises. The quiet reward, a trusted night. When the last check is done properly, the reward is psychological. You don't lie in bed wondering, did I do it right? Will the fire die? Will something flare? You trust your system. And trust is one of the biggest ingredients of deep sleep. A sleepy ending scene. Now let's rest in a final scene. The house is dim, the embers are banked. Someone stands for a moment at the hearth, looking down at the pale ash blanket. It sits smooth and still. They set the poker on its hook. They glance at the room, no cloth too close, no hazards. They check the door bar. They close the shutter latch. Then they stop. They don't return. They don't recheck. They don't rethink. They walk to bed, and the house holds its quiet. Under ash, the ember continues to exist without attention. The warmth will be there in the morning, and you can borrow that for your own bedtime tonight. Do one last gentle check of your day. Is everything safe enough? Is everything good enough? Is there anything that truly must be done now? If not, bank it. Cover the ember, put the tools away, close the drafts, then stop. Let the night be the night.
It's easy to imagine ember saving as a winter skill. Cold nights, stiff mornings, the desperate need for warmth. But ember saving also existed in warmer seasons, just with a different goal. In summer, you might not want a hot room. You might want a quick cooking fire without a long, smoky struggle. You might want a small, controlled ember for early breakfast or for a fast relight after rain without heating the whole house like an oven. So tonight, we'll explore the quieter, lighter version, saving fire without overheating. Why summer still needed embers? Even in summer, fire is still daily life. Boiling water, cooking porridge or bread, heating a small bath, smoking insects away sometimes, lighting for late work or early dawn. And even in summer, the weather can turn damp. Morning dew can make tinder stubborn. Rain can soak kindling. A windy coastal night can make flame difficult. So, having a small ember ready can still save effort. But you don't want to bank a giant heat mass. You want a modest, controlled coal, enough to restart, not enough to turn the room sweaty. Smaller ember nests. Summer ember saving often means less fuel, smaller mound, thinner ash cover. A household might let the cooking fire burn down naturally, keep just a small cluster of coals, cover them lightly with ash, and leave more ventilation than in winter banking so it doesn't smother. The aim is keep it alive, but not hot. Outdoor cooking and separate hearths. In many places, summer cooking moved outside or to a separate kitchen space to avoid heating sleeping rooms. This changes ember saving too. If there is an outdoor hearth or a separate cookhouse, embers can be banked there, away from main living space. Smoke is less irritating indoors. Relighting is easier without making the house feel heavy. Some homes had seasonal patterns. Winter, cook close to the main hearth for warmth. Summer, cook outside or in a cooler annex for comfort. Ember saving follows the household's seasonal breathing. Managing smoke in warm weather. Warm air can make smoke feel more stagnant. If the house is closed for insects, ventilation is reduced and smoke can linger. So summer fire habits often included smaller, hotter fires that burn cleaner, good draft control, openings placed for airflow, quick cooking rather than long smoldering, and careful banking so ash doesn't trap smoky, incomplete burn. The goal is not a slow, smoky night fire. It's a quick, clean flame when needed. The morning fast start. One of the biggest advantages of summer embers is speed. If you wake early to work fields, fish, herd, or travel, you want breakfast quickly. A saved ember means less time striking sparks, less time nursing tinder, faster boiling water, less frustration at dawn. So even if you don't need warmth, you still benefit from readiness. A sleep lesson. Keeping only what you need. Summer ember saving has a very gentle message. In winter, you store more heat because you need more. In summer, you store less because too much becomes discomfort. That's a beautiful model for the mind. You don't need to carry the whole day into the night. You only need what helps tomorrow begin smoothly. Keep a small ember of readiness. Let the rest cool. A sleepy ending scene. Picture a warm evening after a long day. The cooking fire has finished. The room is comfortable. Someone gathers a small cluster of coals, covers them lightly with ash, and leaves them in the outdoor hearth or in a separate cook corner. No big heat, no smoky struggle. The house stays cooler for sleep. The night air moves gently. The ember remains as a quiet convenience for morning tea. And in your own life tonight, you can do the same. Keep only a small ember of intention for tomorrow. Cover it gently. Let everything else cool down. Then sleep, light, calm, unheated by extra worries.
When you bank embers for the night, you're doing two things at once. You're saving tomorrow's fire, and you're arranging tonight's sleep. Because in many old homes, the hearth wasn't in a separate room. It was the heart of the living space. People slept near it, not on top of it, not dangerously close, but close enough to benefit from warmth and protection. Tonight we'll talk about that gentle balance, how households slept near banked embers safely, how distance and barriers mattered, and how a quiet hearth changed the feeling of night. The hearth was a climate zone. A traditional room with a hearth is not one temperature. It has zones. Closest to the fire, warm, sometimes too warm. A little farther, comfortable. Farther still, chilly, especially at floor level. Corners, the coldest, where drafts hide. So sleeping arrangements often followed the warm zone. People placed bedding where the temperature was steady, not where sparks could reach, but where radiated warmth from stone and ash could help through the night. This is why ember saving works so well with sleep. It creates a steady, non-dramatic warmth source. Safe distance, close enough, not too close. Fire safety was always part of household wisdom. Even a banked hearth can produce a stray spark if disturbed, and embers can remain dangerous if stepped on or if a tool is misplaced. So people learned to keep bedding away from direct open hearth edges, areas where ash could be scattered, paths where someone might stumble at night. In many homes, there was an understood boundary, sometimes marked by a low bench, a stone lip, a raised hearth edge, or simply habit. The best sleeping warmth is radiant, not touching. Barriers, benches, screens, and hearth edges. To make the boundary safer, household used simple barriers. A wooden bench between bed and hearth, a low screen to reduce drafts and keep children from rolling toward heat, a raised stone hearth edge that stops ash from traveling, a hanging cloth in some layouts, with careful distance. These barriers weren't complicated engineering. They were quiet, practical fences that made night safer. ash as a safety tool, too. Ash is not only insulation, it's also a fire control material. If a small flare-up happens, ash can smother it quickly. If a coal spills, ash can be thrown over it. This is one reason hearth areas often had ash readily available. So sleeping near a banked hearth didn't always mean danger. It meant proximity to the household's most controlled fire zone, the place everyone understood, the place everyone watched. Warmth without the noise of flame. A banked hearth is often quieter than an active fire. Fewer crackles, less flicker, less smoke movement. That quiet matters for sleep. It means you can enjoy warmth without the mind staying alert to dramatic sound and light. In a dark room, a roaring fire keeps you awake. Embers do not. Embers glow like a low, steady heartbeat. Night routines that protected sleep. Households developed bedtime routines that made sleeping near a hearth safer. Ember banking done before full darkness, when eyes could still see. Tools returned to hooks. Ash smoothed into a neat blanket. Door and window drafts reduced, less chance of sparks moving. Water bucket kept ready, common fire safety habit in many traditions. When routines are reliable, the mind relaxes. Sleep becomes easier. The emotional comfort of a living hearth. There is also a psychological comfort to knowing the hearth still lives. Even if the room is dark, you know there's warmth under ash. You know morning will not be hopeless. You know the house still has a small, protected heart. That knowledge makes the night feel less threatening. It's the difference between, "I hope we can start again," and, "We already have what we need." A sleepy ending scene. Now imagine the room. The embers have been banked. Ash lies smooth and pale. The glow is hidden, but you can feel a faint warmth near the stone. Bedding is laid at a safe distance, close enough to benefit, far enough to be calm. A bench marks the boundary. A rug keeps feet from cold stone. A water bucket sits quietly in its place. Someone checks the hearth once, only once, then stops. They lie down. The room is dark. The air is steady. The house settles. And under ash, the ember remains. A small, warm secret. A promise of morning. A quiet companion to sleep. Tonight, you can let that idea carry you. You don't have to keep your mind blazing. You can bank it gently. You can sleep beside the quiet glow, safe, steady, enough.
In many places, saving embers wasn't only a private household trick, it was part of a wider, calmer social system. Because fire was hard to make on bad mornings and impossible to treat casually in wet, windy seasons. So communities developed an unspoken etiquette around embers: how to borrow, how to give, how to return, and how to avoid turning one neighbor's comfort into another neighbor's cold problem. Tonight we'll move through that quiet code, the gentle rules that made shared heat feel safe. Fire as a community resource. In a village, not everyone's hearth behaved the same every night. One home might have dense, good coal wood. Another might have damp fuel. One chimney might draw well in storms. Another might smoke and fail. So fire sharing became a form of resilience. If one household lost its embers, it didn't always mean suffering. It meant a short visit, a covered ember pot, a small exchange, and a calm restart. This didn't remove hardship, but it softened it. The first rule:
Don't borrow too late. People learned not to wait until everyone is exhausted. If you're going to borrow embers, you do it early in the day, before the village disperses into fields, before the roads turn icy, before the donor household banks for its own night. Late borrowing can feel like urgency. Early borrowing feels like routine. So the polite ember borrower comes in the morning hours, not at deep dusk, unless it's a true emergency. The second rule: don't take the last ember. This is the big one. If a neighbor gives you a coal, they must still keep enough glow to relight their own hearth easily. Otherwise, you've simply moved the problem from your house to theirs. So the best ember gift is a strong coal taken from the edge of the ember bed, while the center remains banked and protected. It's a tiny moral lesson built into the hearth. Help, but don't hollow yourself out. The third rule: bring your own container. A careful borrower brings a safe ember pot, not a random bowl. A proper container means less risk to the donor's home, less risk on the walk back, less mess and less smoke, less time spent in the donor's doorway. The polite version is smooth: open, scoop, cover, thank, leave. No fuss, no lingering cold air blowing in. The fourth rule: offer something back. Sometimes you return embers later. Sometimes you return a favor of a different kind. Fire sharing often lived inside a broader exchange system. You borrow a coal today, you share kindling tomorrow. You receive help in wet weather, you help with a roof patch later. You borrow warmth, you repay with bread, milk, labor, or simply reliability. Not because people were calculating, but because balance keeps communities calm. Even a small thank you mattered. Even a friendly word. Even the simple promise, if yours goes out next time, come to me. The fifth rule: keep it quiet. Because embers involve fire, households didn't treat them like gossip events. They treated them like practical errands. No shame in needing embers. No pride in having them. Just weather and timing. In a well-functioning village, borrowing fire is like borrowing water, a normal act of survival. That normality reduces anxiety, and anxiety is one of the biggest enemies of sleep. The emergency exception. Of course, there were times when rules bent. If someone was sick, if a baby was very young, if a storm destroyed roofs, if wet weather ruined everyone's tinder. In those moments, the village would often relax etiquette and prioritize safety. And this is another quiet truth. Good systems are flexible. They hold most days, and they soften on the hardest ones. A sleepy ending scene. Now, let's rest inside a small scene. A pale winter morning. The village is still quiet. A person walks carefully to a neighbor's door with an ember pot wrapped in cloth. No drama, just a soft knock. Inside, the neighbor nods, opens the hearth, and with tongs lifts a strong coal, only one, maybe two, placing it into the ash nest inside the pot. The lid goes on. The coal is hidden again under gray powder, glowing like a secret sunrise. The borrower says thank you. The door closes quickly so warmth stays inside. The walk home is slow, sheltered from wind. Back at the cold hearth, the lid is lifted, tinder is fed, and flame returns. No panic, no shame, just the village quietly helping itself stay warm. And you can borrow that feeling tonight. If your mind feels like its ember went out, you don't have to spark everything alone. You can accept small warmth from outside, a calm story, a routine, a blanket, a kind message, a quiet breath. Take what you need, leave enough for tomorrow, cover it gently, then sleep.
If you look closely at ember saving, you'll notice something. It's not done with big movements. It's done with small, precise motions, nudging, raking, covering, uncovering, lifting, placing. And small, precise motions are easier when you have the right tools. Tonight, we'll meet the quiet metal helpers of the hearth: pokers, rakes, shovels, tongs, ash scoops, and humble containers. They don't look exciting, but they are part of why ember saving became reliable across long winters. The poker, touch without burning. The poker is the simplest tool, a metal rod, sometimes with a hook or flattened end. Its job is not violence, it's communication with the fire. With a poker, you can test whether embers still live under ash, create a small window of glow, move coals without scattering them, lift ash gently off the hottest core. A good poker lets you touch heat without sacrificing your fingers. It turns the hearth into a place you can manage calmly. The hearth rake, gathering the ember nest. A rake is often wider than a poker and designed to pull coals toward you. This is the ember saving tool. Gather scattered coals into a compact mound. Pull the best coals into the nest zone. Level ash lightly without packing it down. The rake makes the ember nest possible. It helps you make that huddled shape that survives overnight. The ash shovel or scoop, the blanket maker. Banking embers requires ash, and ash is easiest to handle with a small shovel or scoop. A scoop allows you to take dry ash from a safe container, sprinkle it gently over coals. Avoid dumping too much at once. Uncover embers in the morning with controlled movements. Without a scoop, people used improvised tools, wooden paddles, old spoons, flat stones, but metal scoops made the work smoother and safer. Tongs, carrying the heart. Tongs are the tool for moving the most valuable part, a glowing coal or char log. With tongs, you can pick up a strong coal and place it where it will help relight tinder. Move a slow-burning char log closer to the ember nest. Remove a problematic piece that smokes too much. Handle ember pots or hot objects safely. Tongs let you act without panic. They create distance, and distance is safety. The ember pot and ash container. We've talked about ember pots as traveling heat, but even at home, containers matter. Many households kept a dry ash container, lidded, a kindling basket kept near warmth, a tinder box stored above damp floor level, sometimes an ember pot ready just in case. These containers organize the fire system. Organization reduces stress. When everything has a place, the night feels calmer. Hearth brushes and cleanliness. Some homes had a small hearth brush, stiff bristles, to sweep ash neatly. Cleanliness matters because packed ash behaves differently than loose. Clutter can hide live coals. A tidy hearth reduces accidental spreading of embers. Soot and ash tracked into living areas makes rooms feel heavier. A swept hearth is also a psychological reset. It makes the home feel cared for. The culture of quiet tools. Hearth tools were often handmade, repaired, and inherited. They were not disposable. They gained smoothness where hands touched them most. They became familiar in the dark. In a world without bright light, familiarity matters. You can reach for the poker without seeing it clearly. You can find the ash scoop by touch. That reduces fumbling, and fumbling reduces accidents. So these tools don't just move embers, they move the household toward safety. A sleepy ending scene. Now imagine the evening again. The fire is calming. Someone takes the rake and gathers coals into a neat mound. Another person uses the ash scoop to sprinkle a thin, dry blanket over the ember nest. The poker is used once, gently, to settle the shape. The tools are returned to their hook. The ash container is closed. The kindling basket is placed where it will dry. The hearth brush sweeps the edge clean. Everything is small. Everything is calm. And because the work is tidy, the mind becomes tidy too. Tonight, you can borrow that. Put your thoughts in their hooks. Close what can be closed. Leave one small ember glowing safely underneath. Then let the rest become quiet.
Saving embers isn't only a technique, it's a mindset. It's the quiet understanding that heat is valuable, fuel is finite, and sleep matters. A well-banked hearth means you don't wake at midnight to feed flames. It means you don't start each morning from cold defeat. It means the house stays gentler, longer. Tonight, we'll talk about ember discipline, the calm habits that made ash and ember saving reliable across long winters. Don't overfeed the night fire. One of the easiest mistakes is feeding the fire too late, too big. If you load heavy logs right before bed, you may get too much flame, wasted heat up the chimney, too much smoke, soot and irritation, too much risk, unwatched flare-ups. Ember saving prefers the opposite. A solid burn earlier in the evening, then a calmer phase, then banking the coals once they're stable. This way, the heat goes into masonry and coals, not into wild flame. Timing. Bank while coals are healthy. The best time to bank is when you have a strong bed of coals, deep red, steady, not half dead. If you bank too early, while there's still lots of flame, the ash can trap smoke and make a messy, incomplete burn. If you bank too late, when the coals are fading, you may simply bury the last heat and lose it. So households learned the look of the right moment. Flames lower, coals bright, heat steady, not much crackling drama. Then ash goes on. Keep a dry ash supply. We've touched this already, but it belongs in discipline. Banking embers with damp, clumpy ash is like covering yourself with a wet blanket, unpleasant and ineffective. Dry ash insulates better and behaves predictably. So in many homes, some ash is stored dry, some is kept warm near the hearth. Banking ash is chosen deliberately. It's a small preparation that saves a lot of frustration. Protect the ember from drafts. A draft is an ember's enemy in two ways. It can feed the ember too much, making it burn out faster. Or it can cool the hearth area, stealing heat overnight. So ember discipline includes night closure, shutters latched, door cracks stuffed, inner curtain hung if needed,
hearth positioned away from direct airflow. The ember nest is tiny. It doesn't need wind. It needs stable air. Use the right wood for the right job. Not all wood behaves the same. Households learned which woods made long-lasting coals, quick, bright flame, smoky, messy burn. Ember Saving prefers coal makers, dense woods that leave a strong, slow glow. Quick-burning wood is used earlier for cooking and fast heat, but not always for overnight banking. Even if a household couldn't choose perfectly, they could still practice a basic rule: save the best coal wood for the coldest nights. Don't scatter the coals with aggressive poking. A common beginner mistake is stirring too much. A banked hearth needs respect. If you stir and spread coals late at night, you increase surface area, which increases heat loss and oxygen contact. You also risk exposing embers to drafts. So discipline means fewer pokes, gentler movements, coals gathered, not spread. Quiet hands make long nights. Morning discipline. Relight without panic. If embers survive, the morning can still fail if you rush. If you smother embers with thick wood too fast, you choke them. If you blow too hard, you scatter ash and cool the glow. If you dump damp kindling, you create smoke and disappointment. So morning discipline is uncover a small ember window, feed tinder lightly, build kindling in steps, let flame grow before adding weight. You treat the ember like a small creature, not a machine. The emotional benefit: predictability. Ember discipline creates a predictable night and a predictable morning, and predictability is one of the strongest calming signals for the nervous system. When you know the hearth will still have a glow, the house won't plunge into deep cold, the relight will be easy, you won't have to struggle in dampness, your body relaxes earlier, sleep comes easier, you stop checking the night. This is why old routines mattered so much. They weren't only about survival, they were about mental peace. A sleepy ending scene. Picture the end of a winter day. The fire has done its work, the room is warm enough, the kettle has been used, the woodpile is not wasted. Someone banks the coals at the right moment, using dry ash. They close the shutters, they check the latch once, then they stop. The hearth becomes quiet. The ember nest sleeps. And the household sleeps too, because the system is trusted. Tonight, you can borrow that discipline for your mind. Don't overfeed your thoughts late at night. Don't stir them aggressively. Gather what matters. Cover it gently. Close the drafts. Then, let the ember glow quietly.
Saving embers isn't only a technique, it's a mindset. It's the quiet understanding that heat is valuable, fuel is finite, and sleep matters. A well-banked hearth means you don't wake at midnight to feed flames. It means you don't start each morning from cold defeat. It means the house stays gentler longer. Tonight we'll talk about ember discipline, the calm habits that made ash and ember saving reliable across long winters. Don't overfeed the night fire. One of the easiest mistakes is feeding the fire too late, too big. If you load heavy logs right before bed, you may get too much flame, wasted heat up the chimney, too much smoke, soot, irritation, too much risk, unwatched flare-ups. Ember Saving prefers the opposite: a solid burn earlier in the evening, then a calmer phase, then banking the coals once they're stable. This way, the heat goes into masonry and coals, not into wild flame. Timing. Bank while coals are healthy. The best time to bank is when you have a strong bed of coals, deep red, steady, not half dead. If you bank too early, while there's still lots of flame, the ash can trap smoke and make a messy, incomplete burn. If you bank too late, when coals are fading, you may simply bury the last heat and lose it. So households learn the look of the right moment. Flames lower, coals bright, Heat steady. Not much crackling drama. Then, ash goes on.
Morning is where ember saving proves itself. At night, banking embers feels like putting away tools. Calm, tidy, done. But in the morning, when the room is cold and your body wants warmth immediately, the difference between embers survived and embers died becomes very clear. Tonight, we'll follow the best case. The ember nest has lasted, and we'll do it slowly, step by step, the way it was done in countless homes, so gently that the fire almost feels like it relights itself. First light, checking without disturbing. Before you poke wildly, you check. In a dim, dawn room, someone kneels by the hearth. The ash looks still, pale, quiet. No obvious glow, but the ember could still be alive underneath, and rough stirring can scatter the warmth you're trying to save. So the first action is light. A gentle nudge with a poker. A small sweep of ash to one side. A careful search for the faintest red line. Often the ember appears like a secret, a thin orange thread where the ash shifts. And once you see that, you stop digging. You don't want to expose everything. You want to expose just enough. Expose a small window of heat. The goal is to create a small window where ember meets air. If you uncover too much at once, the ember can cool quickly as heat escapes. If you uncover too little, you can't feed it. So people learned to uncover a patch the size of a palm, maybe smaller, just enough to wake the coal gently. Add tinder like feeding a small animal. Now you feed it something easy. Not fixed sticks, not heavy wood, something that catches quickly. Dry grass bundle, bark curls, fine shavings, char cloth, and a tinder nest. You place tinder close to the glow, not on top like a heavy blanket. You let heat rise into it. Then you wait a moment. This pause matters. It lets heat transfer without being smothered. Soft breath, not a storm. When people say, blow on the coals, it sounds aggressive. But the best relight breath is almost like warming your hands. Gentle, steady. A hard gust can scatter ash into the tinder, smothering it. It can also send sparks and dust into the room. So the old technique is soft oxygen, a slow exhale, a patient fan, a slight increase in airflow, not a blast. You watch for the tinder to change. First, a darker edge, then a faint smoke ribbon, then the first tiny lick of flame. The kindling ladder, don't skip steps. Once you have flame, you build it carefully. This is a ladder people learned not to rush. Flame and tinder, tiny kindling, matchstick size, thin sticks, thicker splits, main fuel. If you skip a rung, adding thick wood too soon, you can choke the flame. Thick wood steals heat before the fire is strong enough. So mornings became a quiet sequence. Small, then slightly bigger, then bigger. And because this sequence is familiar, it feels peaceful. It's like making tea the same way every day. Warming the house in zones. As the fire strengthens, the house begins to wake in layers. First, the hearth zone feels warmer. Then hands warm. Then a kettle can be set on. Then the air begins to soften. Then corners stop feeling sharp. A relight is not instant comfort. It's a gradual return. But it's faster and easier when embers survived. And the emotional difference is huge. You feel capable, not stuck. Little helpers. The hearth tools. The quiet efficiency of morning relight depends on tools. Poker for gentle uncovering. Small shovel for moving ash. Tongs for placing a char piece. a basket of prepared kindling kept near the hearth. These tools reduce fuss. They keep the process smooth. And smooth processes are sleep-friendly to imagine. Nothing frantic, nothing loud, just practiced motions. A sleepy ending scene. Now let's end with a calm dawn picture. The sky outside is pale gray-blue. The room is cool. Someone kneels at the hearth and brushes ash aside. A red glow appears, small, steady, alive. They place a few curls of bark near it. They breathe softly. Smoke lifts. Then flame rises. The flame is small at first, then confident. A kettle is set near warmth. Hands hover over the growing heat. The house begins to change. It's not dramatic. It's reliable. And you can borrow that feeling tonight. Even if your mind feels cold in the morning, you can relight gently. You don't need a roaring fire of motivation. You only need a small glow, fed carefully, step by step. For now, though, you don't have to relight anything. You can bank your ember, cover it softly, and let sleep keep it safe until morning.
Rain changes the whole fire story. In dry cold, wood is at least crisp. In wet cold, even the air feels soaked. Kindling refuses to catch, smoke gets stubborn, ash clumps, hands stay clammy, and the most frustrating thing is this: you can do everything right and still feel like the weather is working against you. So people developed quiet, wet weather habits, small tricks that don't look dramatic but make the difference between a miserable morning and an easy one. Tonight, we'll move through those habits, how households kept embers alive, protected tinder, and created little pockets of dryness inside a damp world. The enemy is damp air, not just rain. Wet weather fire problems aren't only about water falling from the sky, they're about moisture everywhere. Wood fibers absorbing humidity, ash becoming heavy and sticky, tinder losing its crispness, smoke refusing to draw in low-pressure weather. Even a roofed woodpile can be wet inside if the air stays damp for days. So the old solution wasn't only find dry wood, it was build dryness in small zones. The dry zone near the hearth. Almost every home created a warm, dry pocket near the fire. Not in the flames, just near enough that gentle heat could do its slow work. In that zone, people placed thin kindling sticks, bark curls, tinder bundles, a small reserve of guaranteed dry fuel. Sometimes, kindling was stored in rafters above the hearth, where rising warm air kept it drier than anything on the floor. Sometimes it was kept in a box near the stove. Sometimes it was hung in bundles. This isn't modern storage, it's climate logic. Hot air rises, so dryness rises too. Drying before you need it. One of the most important wet weather habits is drying wood before you need to light up. If you wait until morning when the house is cold and your fingers are stiff, it's harder. But if you dry tomorrow's kindling tonight, you're calmer tomorrow. So people often had a rhythm. Evening, set aside thin sticks and curls near warmth. Night, bank embers under ash. Morning, relight quickly using the pre-dried stash. It's planning without stress. Bark and resin, wet weather helpers. Certain materials keep their fire-starting usefulness even in dampness. Birch bark, for example, contains oils that help it light. Resinous wood, like pine, catches easier than plain damp sticks. Pitchy shavings can help a weak ember grow into flame. So in wet regions, people often kept small reserves of birch bark curls, resin-rich splinters, and dry shavings protected in a pouch or box. These are not luxury items. They are fire insurance.
Ash management when it clumps. In damp weather, ash can hold moisture and become heavy. That matters because ember saving depends on ash being a light blanket, not a wet lid. So households sometimes did a quiet ash habit. Keep a portion of ash dry in a covered container. Use that dry ash for banking embers. Avoid banking with ash that feels damp and packed. Some even warmed ash near the hearth, so it stayed powdery. It sounds strange, but it's practical. Dry ash insulates better and smothers less aggressively. Banking in wet weather, slightly different. When conditions are damp, embers can be fussier, so banking might change. Embers gathered tighter to share heat, a slightly thinner ash cover so the ember doesn't suffocate, a thicker char piece nearby to feed slow heat, extra care to protect the hearth from drafts that bring damp air. It's all small adjustments, guided by observation. Smoke and draft. Weather makes chimneys moody. Low-pressure wet weather can make smoke behave badly. Wind shifts can push air down a chimney. Damp air can slow a draft. So people learn to help the draft gently. Warm the chimney by burning a small hot kindling fire first. Keep doors closed to prevent cross drafts. Use smaller, hotter fires rather than large smoky ones early on. Open the right vent or damper if available. The goal is a clean draw. A clean draw means less smoke in the room and better heat capture where it belongs. The comfort of preparedness. All these wet weather habits create one big emotional result: calm. When you know you have a dry tinder box, a little bark reserve, kindling drying near the hearth, embers banked properly, dry ash ready, you stop worrying about morning. You stop imagining a cold struggle. The house feels more secure. And security is one of the main ingredients of sleep. A sleepy ending scene. Now imagine a rainy night. Water taps on the roof. Wind pushes mist against the window. Outside, wood is soaked and heavy. Inside, the hearth is small but steady. Near it, thin kindling is stacked in a neat little bundle, drying quietly. A tinderbox sits on a shelf. A few birch bark curls rest like pale ribbons. Someone banks the embers, gently, using dry, powdery ash saved for this purpose. The coals dim, but they don't die. They tuck themselves into a long, slow sleep. Then the house becomes quiet. Rain can do what it wants outside. Inside, dryness exists in small protected pockets, little islands of readiness. And you can borrow that feeling tonight. Even if your day felt damp and heavy, you can create one small dry place inside your mind. A simple breath, a soft blanket, a calm story. Bank your ember. Save your warmth. Let tomorrow be easier.
Sometimes the ember nest survives beautifully, and morning begins with an easy glow. But sometimes the night winds, wind, dampness, or simple bad luck leaves the hearth gray and cold. And when that happens, a household doesn't always start from scratch. Sometimes the old solution is quieter and strangely communal. You borrow heat. Not as a dramatic rescue, but as a simple, neighborly exchange. A small ember carried in a covered pot, tucked under ash, protected from wind, so one home can relight another without sparks, without struggle, without wasting precious tinder. Tonight we'll walk through that gentle practice, the ember pot, the careful carrying, and the soft, social warmth of sharing fire. Why carry an ember at all? Starting fire from flint and tinder is possible,
but it takes time, coordination, and very dry materials. On a damp morning, those things can be scarce. A household might have wet kindling, cold fingers, and a long day ahead. In that situation, a living ember is the easiest shortcut. An ember is already half a fire. It doesn't need to be persuaded from nothing. It only needs air, tinder, and a little patience. So people learned that carrying a coal properly protected could save an hour of frustration. It could prevent wasted fuel. It could keep a sick room warm. It could help a neighbor after a storm. And it turned the village into a safety net. The ember pot, a small, heavy friend. Different regions used different containers, but the idea was the same. A container strong enough to hold heat, safe enough to prevent sparks from escaping, and closed enough to keep the ember alive without letting it flare. Some households used clay pots with lids or improvised covers, iron ember boxes or small metal pans, stoneware crocks used carefully, wooden carriers lined with ash, less ideal, but used when necessary. The best containers were the ones that could tolerate heat without cracking, and that could be carried without fear. Often the ember sat in a bed of ash inside the container. Ash protects, cushions, and controls oxygen. The ember becomes a sleeping seed again, portable this time. Ash as a travel blanket. Just like in the hearth, ash is the quiet hero. If you place a glowing coal directly into a container with too much air, it can flare. It can chew through oxygen, burn too fast and die, or worse, create sparks at the wrong moment. So the ember is often nested, a little ash at the bottom, the ember placed gently on top, a soft ash cover over it, then a lid, slightly cracked or vented if needed. That slight vent is important. An ember needs a little oxygen to stay alive. Too sealed, it dies. Too open, it burns fast. So ember carrying is a small balancing act, quiet, careful, learned by hands, more than words. The walk. Slow feet, calm hands. Now imagine the scene. It's winter. The air is cold enough that your breath looks pale. A thin crust of frost sits on the ground. The village is still quiet, the way it is before the day fully begins. A person steps out with an ember pot in hand. The container is warm, but not dangerously hot, held by a handle, wrapped in cloth, or carried with a folded rag to protect fingers. They walk carefully, not because they're afraid, but because they respect what they're carrying. A living ember is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It hides under ash like a secret, but it is powerful. If the lid shifts, you steady it. If wind picks up, you turn your body slightly to shield it. If snow begins to fall, you tuck the pot closer under your coat. The walk itself becomes a calming ritual, one small warm thing moving through a cold world. Fire as neighborliness. In many places, sharing fire was normal. Not always daily, not always casual, but understood. If someone's hearth went out, you could help. If a storm soaked everyone's tinder, one household might still have embers, and others would come quietly to borrow them. This kind of sharing builds a village's calm. It means a single failure doesn't become a disaster. It means you're not alone with your cold morning. It means warmth can travel. And there is something deeply comforting about that. Heat is not only fuel and physics. Heat is also relationship. Relighting, the ember's second life. Back home or at a neighbor's home, the ember pot is opened carefully. Not in a drafty doorway, not where wind can bully it. Usually near the hearth where the work belongs. Ash is brushed aside gently. There it is, a small red glow, sometimes faint, sometimes bright. A coal like a tiny sleeping eye. Then the relight is calm and methodical. Place prepared tinder near the ember. Let the ember touch it. Cup hands to concentrate warmth. Breathe softly. Slow oxygen, not a gust. Add thin kindling when the tinder is truly caught. And soon flame returns. Not as an explosion, as a steady rearrival. The room begins to change immediately. Cold corners feel less sharp. The day becomes more possible. A kettle can be set on. Hands can be warmed. Life restarts. The safety habits that made it work. Because this was everyday knowledge, people developed safety routines, quiet rules that prevented accidents. Don't carry embers through straw piles or near loose cloth. Don't set the ember pot on wooden surfaces without a safe base. Don't open it in wind. Don't let children carry it without guidance. Don't leave it unattended with the lid off. Keep a little ash nearby to smother if needed. These habits are not dramatic. They are the same kind of gentle attentiveness as wick trimming or banking a fire. The old world wasn't careless with fire. It was often careful in small, constant ways. A sleep lesson hidden in the ember pot. Now let's take the sleepy meaning from all of this. An ember pot teaches a soft truth. Sometimes you don't need to create warmth alone. Sometimes you carry a little warmth from somewhere else. Borrowed, shared, offered. Maybe tonight your warmth is a kind message someone said, a memory of a safe place, a routine that usually works, a story like this one, a blanket, a mug, a quiet corner. You can treat that warmth like an ember. You don't need a roaring fire inside your mind. You only need a small glow, protected from drafts, covered gently, carried into the dark part of the day. And if your own inner hearth feels cold, that's not failure, it's weather. It happens. Borrow warmth if you can. Carry it carefully, and let it relight you slowly. A cozy ending scene. Picture the last image now. A small cottage, frost outside. The door opens briefly, and a neighbor steps in with an ember pot held close. The room smells faintly of cold air and wool. The lid is lifted. A small red coal glows under ash like a hidden sunrise. Tinder is placed. Breath is gentle. The ember brightens. Flame returns. The neighbor smiles softly, not proud, not loud, just satisfied. They set the pot aside. The kettle can go on. The day can begin. Then the door closes again. Warm.
Even the best ember-saving routine sometimes fails. A strong wind can pull heat out. Damp ash can smother. A careless banking can burn too fast. Or the night is simply longer and colder than expected.
And when the hearth is dead in the morning, you need another kind of calm skill, the ability to bring fire back from nothing. That's why ember-saving households didn't rely on embers alone. They practiced redundancy, quiet backups, a small just-in-case system that kept mornings from becoming desperate. Tonight we'll talk about those backups: flint and steel, tinder bundles, dry storage, and the sleepy patience of starting over. Why mornings were the hardest. A cold morning is when you're least coordinated. Fingers are stiff, breath is visible. The house feels unwilling. If you have an ember, the work is easy. If you don't, the work becomes a sequence: spark, catch, nurse, feed, build. And if everything is damp, that sequence becomes frustrating quickly. So people treated tinder as precious. They stored it carefully and handled it like a fragile tool. Tinder, the quiet treasure. Good tinder isn't just dry stuff. It's material that catches a spark easily and holds a tiny glowing coal long enough to transfer it to kindling. Common tinder materials historically included char cloth, cloth burned in low oxygen to make it spark-friendly; scraped dry bark fibers; fine plant down or dry grass prepared in bundles; resinous wood shavings; fungus like amadou, processed tinder fungus in some regions. Different places had different favorites, but the principle was the same: prepare tinder ahead of time, keep it dry, and treat it like gold. Dry storage, the tinder box. Because tinder fails when damp, people kept it in containers: small boxes, pouches, wrapped bundles, sometimes bark boxes if available. Inside might be tinder bundle, flint and steel, a small knife or striker, maybe spare cord. A good tinder box is an emotional comfort. It means even if the hearth is dead, we can make light again. Flint and steel, sparks with a rhythm. Flint and steel isn't instant, it's rhythmic. You strike, a spark jumps. You strike again. You angle it just right. You wait for the tinder to catch. The best fire starters weren't frantic. They were patient and consistent. And in the morning, that patience mattered. A frustrated person strikes too hard, scatters sparks, wastes energy. A calm person strikes in a controlled way and watches closely for the first tiny glow. The moment of catching. The magic moment is not flame, it's glow. A spark lands. A tiny point of orange appears inside tinder. It's as small as a seed, and if you treat it gently, it grows. You cup the tinder bundle in your hands, shielding it from drafts. You breathe softly, enough oxygen, not a gust. The glow spreads. Then you fold the tinder bundle slightly, encouraging heat to build. Only later does flame arrive. This is why ember-saving culture is so sleep-friendly to imagine. It values small beginnings. It respects slow growth. Building up, from glow to kindling. Once you have a glowing tinder bundle, you move it to kindling. Thin, dry sticks, curls, splinters, then to thicker sticks, then to fuel wood. This is a ladder. People learned not to skip rungs. In wet regions, they also learned to keep a small stash of guaranteed dry kindling, stored above the hearth, in rafters or in a box near warmth. Backups on backups. Some households also kept a covered ember pot, carrying coals from a neighbor, extra char cloth, resin or pitch shavings, a spare candle stub for emergencies. Because life is messy, backups reduce fear.
A sleepy ending scene. Now imagine a winter morning when the ember did not survive. The room is cold and quiet. No panic. Someone reaches for a small tinder box, already in its place. They open it. Inside, dry tinder waits like a secret. They strike flint and steel slowly. A spark lands. A tiny orange point appears. They cup it gently, breathe softly, and the glow grows. Soon the first flame lifts like a small bird. The house begins to wake. And you can borrow that feeling too. Even if something went out today, energy, motivation, calm, you can restart gently. You don't need a big flame immediately. You only need a small glow, protected, fed slowly. That is enough.
A fire that survives the night usually isn't spread out. It's gathered, protected, given a shape that helps it last. Tonight we'll look closely at that shape, the ember nest, and how people quietly learned to arrange coals, ash, and slow-burning wood so the hearth could hold warmth until morning without needing constant attention. Why embers last longer when they're together. If embers are scattered, they cool faster. They're exposed to more cold air. They lose heat like tiny islands surrounded by winter. But when embers are pulled into a mound, they share heat. The center stays hotter longer. The outer layer protects the inner glow. It's the same principle as animals huddling for warmth. So a common bedtime step was simply this: rake coals into a compact pile. Not a perfect pyramid, just a gathered heart of heat. Char is the quiet hero. Another secret is char, partly burned wood that isn't fully ash yet. Char holds heat well and can smolder slowly without flaring. If you place a thicker piece of wood near the coals at bedtime, it doesn't always burst into flame. Instead, it can become a slow heat source through the night, feeding the ember nest gently. This is slow fuel, the kind that doesn't demand to be watched. In some homes, people used certain woods for this job. Denser wood that makes long-lasting coals. Other woods burn bright and quick, good for cooking, less ideal for overnight. So households learned their local firewood the way they learned local weather. Ash thickness, too little, too much. Ash is a blanket, but blankets can smother if you pile them too heavy. Too little ash, embers breathe too freely, burn too fast, die sooner. But too much ash, embers can suffocate, lose oxygen, cool and fade. So the best ash cover is gentle, enough to slow the ember, not enough to bury it into silence. This is the kind of knowledge people gained by repetition. You don't learn it once. You learn it in many winters, in many small corrections. The hearth's warm spots. Not every part of a hearth behaves the same. The back area near stone or brick often stays warmer. The center might hold deeper coals. The edges might cool faster. So some households banked embers slightly toward the back or side, where masonry offered extra shelter and where drafts from doors were less likely to disturb the nest. It's very calm, practical thinking. Put the ember where the house protects it best. Morning recovery. Reading the ash. In the morning, you don't just restart a fire. You read what's left. Someone stirs ash gently with a poker or stick. If there's warmth, you'll see it.
A faint red line, a tiny glow, a soft heat rising as ash moves. Then the technique is simple. Expose a small patch of ember, add dry tinder or thin kindling, breathe gently or fan lightly. Let flame return slowly. If you dump too much wood too soon, you can choke the ember. If you blow too hard, you scatter ash. The best restart is patient, and patience again is the theme. The ember nest as a sleep metaphor. This is what makes ember saving such a perfect bedtime history. It teaches that endurance is often quiet. You don't keep everything blazing. You gather what matters. You cover it gently. You let it last. A good ember nest is not loud, but it is powerful. It holds tomorrow inside tonight. A sleepy ending scene. Imagine the house now. The fire has been banked. Embers are mounded into a small nest. A thin ash blanket rests over them. The room is dim, but you can feel a soft warmth near the hearthstone. Outside, the wind is moving. Inside, the ember is not afraid. It's protected. It's waiting. And you can do the same. Gather your attention into one small warm place, your breath. Cover it gently with calm. Let the day quiet down. You don't have to burn bright all night.